2024. Welcome, Mr. City Manager. I see there's a bit of a change in the steps, so who would you like to go first?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate you guys indulging a little bit of a last-minute change in the batting lineup this evening. We are still doing all three presentations, but just to accommodate some schedules, we would like to start with a presentation to the council on the animal shelter facility. Director of Health and Animal Services, Christina Heinen, is coming forward. As she does, I just want to remind the council and those watching this evening, for the better part of a year plus, the city has been contemplating and considering how to eat into our $1 billion of deferred maintenance. One of the tools we've been contemplating is a general obligation bond. A citizen advisory committee is looking at that and scheduled to present their findings to the council on November the 12th. But tonight we want to focus on the three facilities that are being contemplated potentially to be funded through a general obligation bond. And so first we're going to have Ms. Heinen present to you on the status of our animal shelter.
Good evening. My name is Christina Heinen. I'm Director of Health and Animal Services for the City of Independence. Tonight, as Zach shared, I'm here to discuss the regional animal shelter and the facility, its current issues, and what we are currently dealing with. So the facility is approximately 30,000 square feet. There's space for about 100 dogs and 100 cats as it is currently configured. There's vet clinic space with surgical areas. There's 6 enclosed outdoor play yards. We actually added an additional play yard thanks to a wonderful Boy Scout troop who had an Eagle project that they wanted to do. And we have 2 laundry facilities on site. We run the shelter with 5.1 FTEs for our animal services group. So we have 4 animal services officers and we have 2 part-time dispatchers, admins, answer the phones, and help put in those calls. And then we have 14.1 FTEs for the shelter staff. So we have 6 animal care techs, we have 1 full-time, 1 part-time vet tech, we have a vet, we have management, we have a behaviorist, we have our volunteer coordinator, and we have 2 admissions and adoptions counselors. So those are the people who, when a stray dog comes in, they help process it, they vaccinate it, they get it ready for adoption, and then when it's ready for adoption, they also go ahead and they work with you, make sure all the paperwork gets done properly, and help you choose the right animal. Yes, Councilmember McCandless.
Can you tell me animal services means what?
So animal services on here is that division, and those are the animal control is what it was typically called. So there's multiple issues throughout the building that we've shared with the county multiple times. I'm going to go over all of them in a little bit of detail tonight, but there's the fire suppression system. We have issues with the artificial turf. There's plumbing issues, various plumbing issues throughout the building. Our HVAC, we've gotten a lot of it repaired, but it continues being an issue. Fencing, door closers. Ideally, at some point, we'll want the incinerator moved on site, and there's roof leaks. So going into some of that, the fire suppression system, every year we have our annual fire inspection. Every year we go ahead and as part of our contract, since the county owns the building currently, we send over the results of that fire inspection and all of the issues. And so far every year, those issues have not been fixed. Those issues include painted sprinkler heads. There's some heads that need to be replaced due to age, and different gauges that need to be replaced due to age. It's about $5,000 worth of work that needs to be done. The county is aware, and so hopefully they will get these things fixed. The artificial turf, we have artificial turf in our 6 outdoor play yards. This allows us to sanitize, clean the different yards that the animals go out onto, make sure that we don't have disease spreading from animal to animal. Artificial turf only has a life of about 10 years. This building was completed in 2012. We are in 2024. As you can see from the pictures, and when you're there, it's much more noticeable. We have turf that's not only tearing, because the dogs like to play rough, but we also, when we're out there cleaning it wears using all those chemicals on the turf. And over time, it has settled, so it is uneven. There's trip hazards. It needs to be redone. This is not something that can be fixed. Apparently, whoever installs the turf is the only one that can actually go back and fix it properly. Those are, another turf company won't come in and try to fix turf that they did not install. However, we don't know who that original company was, and the county has not been able to supply that name, so we can't just have it repaired. We would have to have it replaced. There's plumbing issues throughout the building. The photo here shows something that's really typical. There are leaks all throughout. We have a ton of hoses that are there to be hooked up so that we can clean the entire building every single day. And over time, of course, there are leaks that have sprung, so we have water that streams out from underneath the cinder blocks. We also have a hot water heater that does not function. Fortunately, we have 2 hot water heaters, so the other one is doing its job and keeping that water hot for us throughout the building, but the other one is non-functioning at this time and needs to be either repaired or replaced. Our HVAC system, we were able to work with the county and get the large unit repaired, and we are now working on some other minor units throughout the building. However, certain parts of the building, even when repaired properly, will still not have the necessary airflow to maintain those temps, especially if anybody's ever been in. You walk in the front door, and there's really high ceilings there, and if you look, there's really tiny vents. So those admissions and adoptions people, when you walk in, it is either very, very hot in the summer or it's very, very cold in the winter. Our fencing that's there around the play yards is starting to rust. We go through, we treat it, we spray paint it, we cover it, but it is continuing to have issues and rust in certain places. Again, we are cleaning those yards constantly, so it is not surprising that there's chemicals being put on and a lot of water going by, so it is natural that there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done. We do a lot of the maintenance. However, some additional fencing would be helpful in many areas just because, for a safety issue, for trying to control the dogs coming in and out and not having them run when coming back into the building. Door closers is another thing that apparently has a life of approximately 10 years. We have 8 door closers throughout the building that need to be replaced. These door closers are a safety hazard for our staff. The doors either don't close on their own and we have to pull the doors closed, or they close so suddenly that you run the risk of having a dog you're walking through get caught because they're slamming closed. These are things that the county is well aware of, but they have not yet been replaced. And then one of the big things, we have multiple leaks throughout the building. These are just a few that are shown. We have those constant beautiful water features, whether they are in some members of our staff, their office. There's one that's back by the dishwashing area. There's multiple throughout the hallways. We are constantly replacing those tiles. We're constantly trying to find out where the leaks are. The county has been up there multiple times. They are very well aware, but they have not been able to stop the leaks. I've heard many say, well, we should just buy a new building or build a new building. It would be much cheaper rather than buying something that needs all these repairs. We ran the numbers a few years ago. Kansas City Pet Project was one of the last ones to build in our area. If we were to do a comparable build with their pre-COVID building numbers, it would cost us about $12,000 to build the same size of a building somewhere else, but it's going to be a lot more now. Yes. These are all, of course, pre-COVID numbers because all of these buildings were done pre-COVID. So we know that it would be expensive.
So just for clarification, you said $12,000?
Oh, sorry, 12 million.
12 million? Just
Yes,
check.
12 million. That is my presentation. Short and sweet, but I will take any questions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions? Please proceed.
Christina, can you quickly just explain who has responsibility, who owns what there, and whose
Yes.
situation all
So
that is?
the city owns the land and the county owns the building.
Okay.
We had a contract when we first started, and the contract very clearly laid out that any building systems, HVAC, plumbing, and similar building systems is how it was laid out, are the responsibility of the county to maintain. It is their building, they are to maintain it. The city is to do normal daily maintenance, changing light bulbs, cleaning, changing air filters, those sorts of things. The county has not always lived up to that. They are aware of their responsibilities, and they're aware that things need to be fixed.
And also, we also have a contract with them for service too, correct? For their certain portions of the county for animal pickup and,
So our contract has expired with the county. We have continued with it. And so, yes, we provide the same level of animal control and sheltering services as we do our own residents for the county, for unincorporated Jackson County and county parks.
were those reimbursable costs to us?
So it's in exchange for, they would pay for the debt on the building and they would maintain the building, and in exchange, we would provide those services for them.
And Mr. City Manager, we've reached out to them several occasions, or at least one that I know of recently, of how we can remedy the purchase of the building, the debt service of the building.
Yes, so this is as I think is obvious to everyone, a very unusual and awkward arrangement, and it's one that puts the city and the citizens we serve in a precarious position because we don't own the building. There's really nothing that would prevent the county from one day locking it and we be unable to access it, particularly without a contract for services right now, which has been expired for some time. We've reached out specifically to renew and renegotiate the contract for services, have not been able to get traction on that conversation. Most recently, to help solve and alleviate this dual ownership issue, the city proposed that the county use a small portion of their remaining ARPA funds, which exceeds $70 million, to pay off the debt service on the building and transfer it to the city, and then we would be in a better position to make these facility investments that you're hearing about tonight. That proposal has also been met without a response. And just to clarify for the council, apologize if this was already made clear, but as of a couple of months ago, there's about $3.34 million left in debt service on the building, so would have been a very small portion of the $70 million plus that the county has sitting in their ARPA coffers that have to be spent by the end of this year.
From what I gather, the main thing is just getting them to respond.
That has been the challenge. It's not the difficulties of negotiation, it's the difficulties of starting a conversation.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update.
Please proceed.
Christina or is it Mr. Walker, whoever, how much do you think we have that is out there in the way of deferred maintenance at this point? Do we have any idea on that?
So, without knowing exactly what's wrong with the roof, the estimate is between 100 to 200,000. But again, that's without knowing whether the roof needs to be replaced. Does it just need to be properly repaired? Some of the HVAC issues we've been able to fix. I don't know how in-depth the others are without being able to have the county involved.
And just to be clear, those are some of the more immediate triage, fix-it needs. In the current proposal that your Citizens Advisory Committee is contemplating as part of the general obligation bond, the thought process would be that we utilize, set aside $5 million in the bond for this project, 3.3 or so going toward acquisition, paying off that debt service, and then that would give the city well over $1 million, close to $2 million, to be able to do not only these immediate triage needs, but some of the facility enhancement, ground maintenance, some of the expansion projects that Ms. Heinen and her team and our volunteers have long desired and discussed. So it would allow us to further enhance our functionality at the shelter as well.
And so it sounds like the biggest problem is getting the county's attention. And so, but it also sounds like they're essentially in breach of contract at this point. If there are things, from my perspective, if there are things that we can do to get their attention, like maybe we don't need to respond to the people in Jackson County if they're not going to respond. That's pretty drastic, I understand. And I'm not advocating for that at this point, but, I'm just, somehow we have to get their attention, it seems like. And if they're, it just seems that if they're not going to do their part, then, we need to either take legal action or do something. I don't know. I'm just kind of reacting to what I'm hearing here. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Please proceed.
Ms. Heinen, a couple of questions. How many animals do we get that are from the county? Do we have any kind of estimate of what percentage?
Yes, so we probably have 250 approximately that are county animals each year.
And is the county making its payment for those 250 animals?
Well, the county is paying for the building. They're paying their debt on the building, which was the agreed upon amount for those animals.
And so if we chose through some means to satisfy the bond and pay off that debt, then what would happen to the county? Would they just be responsible for their own animals, or would we renegotiate a contract for pay per animal?
We could do either.
And who is responsible for animal control calls for county properties? Is that the City of Independence?
That is City of Independence, yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Good
Thank you.
presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. City Manager, what's next?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, our next facility that we're going to discuss with you is one I know that is not new to the council, but as we continue to find ways to tackle this longstanding issue, the Justice Center is certainly part of this GEO bond contemplation as well. We've done a lot of work to refresh our numbers and our estimates to better understand the current market economics for a project of this magnitude. And so tonight you're going to hear from Jennifer Gerlach, Project Advocates. Jennifer and her team have spent a lot of time working with architects and engineers firms to bring forward a revised proposal. This figure was shared with the GEO Bond Committee at their last meeting, but this presentation will go into a little more detail for your benefit. With that, I'll turn it over to our friends at Project Advocates.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Gerlach. I'm your owner's representative and trusted advisor at Project Advocates.
And I'm Brad Way, principal with Project Advocates, working with Jennifer on this facility.
All right. So just a quick recap process to date. You guys you've seen all these except the last
And
three.
is there a microphone up there so we just make sure that people at home
Yep.
can hear you?
Make sure to stand closer. The process to date. You guys have seen all these except the last three. So last time we met with most of you was in July for the design charrette. Since then, the design team has been working through the updated conceptual plan, and we have also been putting together the budget for the IUC renovation and the master plan. Pardon me, the master plan. And here we are today for our update. So programming update. One thing I know that we talked about in July was the program itself. So in 2018, Hafer Wysocki, who is now Hafer Welker, and the team that's on board, that was their previous name, did a space needs assessment. It was updated in 2021 during the pandemic, and then we've just updated it in 2024 with Hafer Welker. From that, there's several differences that we discovered from 2018 to 2021 to today. You can see them up there. The main differences are that we did not have a full municipal court programmed in either of the prior studies. So when we fully build that out with the staff and the need for the court chambers there. It's an additional 8,000 square feet on top of what we had programmed in 2021 and 2018. Staffing of the police department previously only accounted for about 20 to 25 years worth of growth. Well, as we've been looking at this building, we've been looking at how do we make this last 50 or 60, 70, 100 years. So we need to make sure that we're building for the future of your city. And so our new program is evaluating for at least 50 years. We've been working with the police department and with their staffing to look at those needs. And that increased our staff counts by an additional 108 staff over what we previously had. And that's about an additional 15,000 square feet that's required. That is in the locker spaces to make sure that we have adequate locker rooms. That's in offices. It's in general circulation. It's kind of spread out across the whole building. It's not just one space. The detention facility has grown due to requirements and needs. So the policing requirements and detention requirements have changed and evolved. And since then, it's expanded. We now need to have more separate spaces, individual cells, and that's added about 12,000 square feet worth of just detention space. The training K-9 firing squad, or the firing range, sorry.
Yes,
Firing
we
range
do
there.
not have a
We do
firing
not
squad.
have that, do we?
Everyone publicly,
Just seeing if you're
no
listening up
firing
there.
squad.
Just seeing if you guys are listening, not falling asleep
That would
yet.
require council approval, I'm sure.
The firing range, those standards have also updated and those departments have grown. So over those 3 areas, it's about an additional 7,000 square feet that was added. So overall, looking at those past 2 programs to today, we're about 42,000 square feet bigger. So when you start seeing these numbers, there is intentional increase there, not just in cost that we'll talk, but it's program space that's grown to develop this building over the next 50 plus years. There's also some design and construction considerations. As you are all aware, we've had kind of a crazy roller coaster of a past handful of years with construction. Through that, we've also have to look at these buildings for what they're used for. So the building code requires an ICC 500 shelter, which means it's a indestructible shelter for critical emergency operations, which is a police station. Your fire stations also have those. Your emergency, your ECC center also has it. The whole building, I believe, is that. For anything that's a critical emergency operation. So in that, the whole building does not have to be, but there are requirements for the amount of occupied space and the amount of people that would be in there and how much of that building has to be it. Unfortunately, what that does is it increases our construction price because it's a much heftier building. If you think about to be indestructible to weather, tornadoes primarily in this area, thicker walls of concrete, more steel, separate HVAC and power systems to supply it if the building was ever hit. We also have a building IBC risk category 4, which increases the structural capacities for wind, snow, and seismic loads. Again, it is having to beef up that building because of the nature of its use. We're also trying to design this building for the best value, making sure that we don't build it and then in 5 years have to come back and ask for more money for maintenance for things that we didn't design correctly the first time or pick the best value for you. So the design team and the city team have been working really hard to make smart decisions with the layouts, making sure we're being really efficient with the space. We're not building in a lot of extra fluff. We're building in just what we need and seeing how we can combine uses, but also making sure we're picking good value for the building. And also looking at incorporating of the existing IUC building into that program. So while the program grew 42,000 square feet, we do have the existing IUC building, 3 levels of about 15,000 square foot a level. That is helping incorporate some of that space. So we've been looking at which departments fit there and how do we do it's a great building already. So how do we do the least amount of work to that building because it's so brand new already, 2016 I believe it was finished. So what can go in there without having to do a lot of renovation, and how do we then build onto that for the rest of the program space that's required? So during the budgeting and estimating phase, there are some considerations we also have been looking at. Construction trends pre and post-COVID, as I mentioned earlier. So in Kansas City, region-wide and nationwide, we've also seen a severe labor shortage. That is just people to do the work. Because of that, costs are driving up to get those qualified people to work with our contractors, with our trade partners, anywhere in the process. Cost has been driven up. Material shortages and long lead times are also causing prices to rise, mainly because we're having to pay more to get them on time. So if we start the construction project and for example, a transformer takes 4 years to get that, which is about not too far off with some of the bigger equipment, our building might be done in 2.5 years, but then you can't use your building for 18 months while we sit and wait for equipment. So you have to pay a premium to get it there on time. This is not something that's unique to Kansas City. We're seeing this nationwide. Escalation. Previously, in the past years, it was reaching 15 to 20% during the pandemic times. We're currently now seeing about 1.5% per quarter, about 6% per year. So we want to make sure that we are planning and recommending an escalation as best as we can use our crystal ball and project into Q2 of 26 when we'd anticipate construction starting, what that would be. So we anticipate Q2 of 26 because we would be waiting for the bond to pass in April of 25. We'd have about a year worth of design, and then we would start construction shortly thereafter.
Please proceed.
Don't mean to interrupt, but Mr. City Manager, these escalation costs that we're talking about now, that's going to be across the board on everything we do. Is that a fair assessment, would you say?
From a construction standpoint, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Sorry, thank you.
And like I said, this is not unique just to Kansas City. Really, we see these regionally as materials are sourced. If we were on the coast, it would still be quite a bit higher. We in the Midwest are able to source a little bit more local. So the budget that you'll see also includes all hard costs, which are the construction costs. So that is primarily what we would go out to a construction manager at risk for. That is a contract to build the building. And then all the soft costs, which include the design fees, permits, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So if you turn the building upside down, shake it, everything that falls out, we have to put stuff in it. So it's all of that and soft costs. So it's an all-in budget for everything. We wanted to budget this with smart planning for design and construction, project contingencies to avoid shortages. As I mentioned, we don't want to come back to you in 5 years and say we need more money for maintenance items. We also don't want to come back to you midway through design or midway through construction and say, oh, we don't have enough money, escalation got away from us. Now, we don't have a crystal ball, so we're giving you a recommendation of what we think we would include for this, but we really want to be as all-in as possible so that this is a true value project. At the end of the day, you have it all right here. Shortages, as it says there, can be due to under budgeting, which we're trying not to do here. Escalation, again, don't have that crystal ball. Unknown fees and permits, unforeseeable conditions, unsuitable soils. So at the IUC building, we do know there used to be an old hospital there. We know there are some relic foundations under there that we have done some borings, which are the big geotechnical drills that come in, sample the ground. We do know there's some there. Until we start sticking big shovels in the ground, we don't really know what's there. We will find out very quickly. So we've also made some general contingencies and allowances to account for what we believe is there based on the old footprint of the building and what we think happened when it was infilled.
Mr. Mayor?
Please proceed.
Sorry if you don't mind. As we're going through this, so with the budgeting, is there a contingency budget that you're shooting for?
Yes, so we include a design contingency, which is evolution from this point right now to the very end when we have a construction document set, which is permittable and buildable. That contingency is not so much excess money. It is money that we know is going to be part of the project. We just haven't identified it yet because we haven't really designed anything but the concept. There's also a project contingency that we will carry from now all the way through. It will reduce as we get further into the process. So right now we're carrying 10% on the whole project for all those things that we just don't know yet.
Sure.
When we get into the construction phase, it'll reduce down to some agreed upon amount, generally somewhere between 5 and 7%. For all of those unknowns that happen, the unsuitable soils, things that we just could not foresee happening.
And the design contingency also ratchets down really to zero when you complete design.
Correct.
And you're ready to go to construction. You don't need any more design contingency, so it goes away.
Does that carry over to the construction contingency?
Construction contingency is its own line item of money. Typically 4 to 5% is where we recommend. That is actually carried all the way through construction. So we carry that now, and it's all the way to the end. If it's not spent, you get that money back.
100%.
It is, that's standard construction. There's just a lot of things that happen on the contractual side. A CMR contract, construction manager at risk contract, stipulates and helps
Sure.
us determine what that needs to be.
Thank you. Please proceed.
So this is a conceptual map of the parcel of where the IUC building, which you can see is that red rectangle right in the middle of the screen. That's the existing IUC building. At the north, you've got Artie Mize on the west. You've got the park on the south there. And the new building would go right where that big yellow square is. So you can see it says proposed building kind of highlighted in there. So we have broken out in the budget each one of these different buildings and components in its own budget. So we can analyze and look at where we have risk, where we have options for more efficiencies. And I mentioned it earlier, we've done a great job of trying to design efficient buildings here. So we've got the existing IUC, the Courts PD addition. The white area at the bottom is the existing ECC. You've got your SWAT tech bays. Those are pre-engineered metal buildings that house all those really sophisticated police department vehicles that need to be indoors because they have technology in them. We've got K9 over there on the top right corner, a facility there that also has their training yard, as well as a building for the staff, and then kennels for the dogs. Again, more vehicle buildings, the firing range there at the bottom, along kind of creating a perimeter boundary of all the buildings around the site. So it creates this interior looking site for safety and security, and there would be a fence around all of this as well. So as we get into the next slide, you'll see this color code pulls over into each line item here. I know it's very tough to read, so I don't expect you to be able to read all that from here. I will go through this. All in, hard costs and soft costs, as we mentioned, is $122,600,000. That would be all in for the entire project as it's laid out. It is priced for construction to begin in Q2 of 2026, as we mentioned, and it does include that 9% escalation, which is 1.5% per quarter for 6 quarters to 2026. So each building there, the top would be the phase 1 of the IUC. Phase 1 would be levels 2 and level 3. So those are the 2 floors that we think we have the best capacity to get in without doing a ton of rework to that space. And then the site allowance there is its own next item there. Our site is our big bucket. It's a big site. It's 14 acres. And it is, while it has been, parts of it have never been developed. We do know we have the old hospital foundations there. We do know that we don't have utilities that run through there, so we are going to have to reroute new utilities through this whole site. So your storm, your electricity, your water, your fire protection, your gas, all those utilities have to get to these buildings. We also do need to build some retaining walls. As you know, from the north going down to the south, it does slope quite a bit down there. And so there will be a series of small retaining walls just to keep the grade from being a ginormous hill. The next building down is phase 2. That next red line item is phase 2 of the IUC. That is part of the IUC renovation we would do with the bigger project. So the reason we do that is because we're going to be busting out part of that wall to incorporate a new elevator and stair tower to connect into the new building so that they are one building, that the staff does not have to go outside to get between the 2 buildings because they are one department that walk across. We don't really want to rip off the sides, that one section of the building there, until we really need to, so that would be phase 2 that would happen with the main bigger project. The next yellow line item there is the Courts PD addition. That is, and I'll show you some renderings here, that is the meat of where the project is. That is the majority of the staff. That's your detention. That's also the courts chambers. That is the backside of the parking for the staff cars and patrol cars to park on the backside. And then each line item there's the dog kennel, which is that K9 facility, bomb crash motor. That's another one of those pre-engineered metal buildings, along with the SWAT and tech bays, the firing range, and then carports. There is a line item for potentially putting carports over some of those PD cars if needed, and then trash enclosures. We will need several of them around the facility just to make sure we are properly disposing of everything. Down there, next, you've got your subtotal. Then you have what we talked about just a minute ago, Councilmember. It was the design contingency and the project contingency. So we have that design contingency, which is 8% on the project, and as Brad mentioned, that goes down to 0 as we get to the very end of design. The project contingency is at 10% right now. That will go down as well, but we will never go to zero because we want to make sure that we are covering all those unknowns through construction. We then have our soft costs. As I mentioned earlier, those soft costs are all of the things that are inside the building, all the permits, all the fees, all the design teams, everyone that has to work on the project to get this project completed is part of the soft costs. Right now, since we haven't identified how many exact rooms or desks or chairs there are, we have done some analysis of similar facilities and building types and done a ratio of hard to soft costs of where we believe these would fall based on our historical data of other similar facilities built in Kansas City recently. And you'll see on the right in that green column, the notes section, there's a percentage there. That is your hard to soft cost split of where we believe that's going to come in. Each building's a little different. Obviously, in those vehicle buildings, we're not going to have a whole lot of furniture unless we have a couple offices in there. So they're a much smaller percentage, don't need as much stuff. And then again, we have a project contingency, the same 10% on the stuff that's in there, because your furniture will escalate just like your building materials, from if we buy it out now to several years from now. And then the total, then you'll see there's an escalation. I'm sorry, the blue line's going right through the middle there. The escalation line item that we talked about, that is that crystal ball number where we are recommending 1.5% per quarter right now. Could change, but that's what we're recommending. So that's how we get to that all-in of $122,600,000. I'm going to pause right there before I go on to the next, because I feel like there might be some questions if you'd like me to go through any specific buildings.
Anyone, any questions? Please proceed.
Mr. Mayor, so if you go back a couple slides to your conceptual budget map.
Yes.
One more.
One more?
From maybe one more to that, sorry. Well, it's the conceptual budget map.
Oh, the map.
Oh, the
Yes,
map,
sorry.
yes, I'm sorry.
There you go. So the green portion there, the future training facility. So that was something that you presented to us as a council over the IUC, but that is not part of this fixed cost here? Or is that part of that fixed cost?
Right now, it is not in the current
Okay.
project. That is a future opportunity. There's space on the site for future needs and growth and expansion.
So hence the word future, so that's not in this. Okay, I was just
Correct.
double checking. Okay.
Please proceed.
So we're going to show you some renderings now that have come out of all the hard work that was done over the past several months, and reflective of hopefully what you guys saw at the design charrette here. We're going to see some exterior views, and then we'll do a couple quick interior views. I will say the interior views, we haven't designed it yet. We want to make sure that we're getting all the stakeholders' input before we actually picked colors and walls. So those are more white, gray box style, just so you can see 3D space. But there's a lot of time to go before we could show you any colors or materials in that section. So this is a view from the northwest corner, would be looking south over what would be the new municipal court area. Off to the distance on the left, you'd see the existing IUC building there. So you're standing looking at the front as if you were public parking in the parking lot, getting ready to walk in the building. This is a similar view. Now we're standing just right in front of it, but looking a little bit more to the west instead of to the east. So that would be the front door of the public walking into the municipal court building. This, from that first view, is just sliding down east a little further. This would be the public's view as they walk in the police department new entrance. And you can see off to the left of the page, there is shadowings of the IUC building there, so you can see how that connects. That's also part of the reason you can kind of see where the car is. There's some windows down low. That's actually the current first floor of the IUC building. That's one of the reasons why we don't want to do that phase 2 of the IUC building until we build this bigger building, because it does take out a few of the windows. It does some grading there that we just don't really want to do until we have to, because we would have no entrance into the building. We are shifting the PD's entrance to this new front entrance here instead of the IUC. The only people that would come into that existing IUC building would be police staff, and they'd be coming in on the east side in a locked card access door.
And one thing I'll say on the site is there are a number of public access.
Please make sure you get close to the microphone, please, because
sorry.
people will be watching.
On the site, there's a number of public access to be able to get to public parking. There's also fencing and secured gates to be able to get to some of the secured parking for the police or other staff. for the project. So that's been laid out again early on, but enough to be able to figure out the circulation of the site, where the secured parking is, where the public parking is.
And so this is just stepping back from all of it. So as Brad mentioned, this parking that you see right here, this would all be public parking. Off to the right, as you go around the edge of the building to that first view, that would also be public parking. Then there would be a fence. We would have some private staff parking and a gate to separate police department, also detainee, all of that on the back side of the building. This would be your public entrance, and you can see how it integrates with the IUC building and your new 2 front entrances for courts and PD. Moving inside, again, I mentioned we have a lot of design still to do here, so there's no materiality shown. This is strictly gray box here, but this would be an entrance, a view of the entrance as you come in the police side here. You would be welcomed into a lobby. Police records is right in front, and then from there would be doors that would take you back to the different departments with access. Similar to municipal court, so this would be coming in that front door, which is off to the right, a waiting area, security, and then going into the actual court there on the left. That's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That looks like a bucket full of public parking. Just thinking, we have our parking lot out here, people who come into the police station, people who come to court. Maybe you have 30 people a day. It seems like a lot of public parking. So I'm sure you've done studies anticipating that we're going to have, a huge increase in the number of people who come?
We've actually reduced that number down quite a bit, and we will be asking for some sort of code modification there to not have to provide as much as might be required for the type of facility. I think we're at 200, don't quote me on that, around 200 stalls total for public in the front, and then in the backside there's about as many for public and, for PD cars and for private cars, but I think it's right about 200 on the front side. And we've been given some direction from the court staff on an influx day of how many cars they would potentially see, and also accounting for any public that would be going to the police. That will still be continued to be studied. That's not necessarily a set in stone number. These are our preliminary program numbers, but yes, as we get closer forward, if we can reduce it, we would love to reduce it so we don't have a sea of asphalt, for sure.
Just thinking also, just from an environmental lens, hoping that we are thinking a lot about the energy economy of the building, and also just things like runoff, and because all of that flat increases our risk when we have these superstorms of flooding, et cetera. So thinking about swales and places that we can deal with that in a way that's not hard on our municipal services for their storm water runoff.
Can I address that real fast?
Yeah.
It's hard to see on the map here. Do you see the little yellow on the bottom right corner? So that is actually on-site detention, that we would be retaining water there. We would anticipate it would probably not be full all the time. It would be more of a dry detention, so it fills up when we need to, goes down when we don't. Underneath the parking lot of that kind of maroonish brown lot directly to the north,
It's kind of outlined in yellow, if you can see
kind of a yellow
that.
squiggly, we are going to be required to have additional underground detention on there so that we are not flooding the system downstream of this. So we will be, there's a whole site stormwater study that's in the works right now. We've done a preliminary one to make sure that we are not overwhelming everything downstream from this.
And the city has not always been fantastic about investing in what we already have, hence the problem we are in now. So I hope that you're really thinking about the longevity of a hard-used building and things that will not need a lot of upkeep. And also to Mr. City Manager, just are we making sure that we continue to have a budget for replacement, repair, and rejuvenation of a new building so that we never have to figure out how to drag these back from the dead?
I would say right now, a majority, if not the entirety, of the marijuana sales tax is going toward the design of this building. This would certainly need policy conversations by the council, but it's my opinion that would be a viable source to, make a sinking fund to where we have a maintenance budget that we can address these issues on a pay-as-you-go basis instead of trying to play decades worth of catch-up.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else, other questions? Please proceed.
So, I'm trying to remember when we met in July, what kind of number you threw at us then. And I wanted to think it was in the 80-some million
I did not throw a number
range.
at
We
you
did not
then.
throw any numbers.
You-
This is
Probably
our
not for
first-
you, no, I think that was somebody else.
Yeah, this was
But-
our first round of budgeting.
So I have to admit, I'm having a little sticker shock here. So I guess a couple of questions. I know you said that this is designed in such a way that, we could have future growth. Is it designed in such a way that, either we could, shrink it now and add later, or can we not complete parts of the facility now? And, I'm cognizant of the fact that that's a big number. I know when we were talking about our GO bond, we weren't thinking that we would need to go at that high. Anyway, I guess those kind of questions come to mind.
Yes, there are definitely opportunities for what we call shelling out a space. You build the shell of the building and you don't finish out the interiors until it's needed. So that's one way we could potentially look at saving some upfront costs now. Definitely in those same areas, we wouldn't buy furniture if we don't need, if we need 9 of the 10 offices fit out for current officers but not one, we can always defer purchasing those items until later. There are opportunities to continue expanding on the site if we need to. What's a little tricky is the anchor of that existing utility center building and trying to work around that. Also, it's difficult to see here, but between the lime green area in the middle of the page that's parking and then the blue and the brown areas, there is about a 25-foot drop that's a treed area that we're trying to preserve that we just do not want to touch. We want to leave. It's also helping with stormwater retention there and just having the treat site. So we were really looking at how could we expand to the west and the south and integrate. I do think there's some opportunities that we could look at where could we potentially look at expansion on the future. Caveat being, it's always more expensive later than it is today. And so where do we make that smart choice? Again, so we're not coming back in 10 years and saying, we've already outgrown the building. We need X number more to try to build on. So what is that right tuning? Where is that balance? And I think that's definitely something we will continue studying through the design process if this is approved.
And likewise, and I don't even really want to think about this yet, but, are there areas that we could, not do, or not do as to the degree that we're doing them in this plan? Those kinds of, that would be another question I think I should ask.
Yeah,
I
I can
would-
address that there are areas, like Jennifer said, you can always shell parts of the building and not do the finishes and furniture and everything inside. There's also the opportunity logistically to phase some of the buildings in the future, whether that's a firing range or a K-9 building, or these are all separate. We've estimated them all separate, so we can pull them apart and be able to kind of logistically figure out how that works the best. The biggest impact on that, like Jennifer's saying, is now what escalation do you use? This particular building's gonna now be in 2027 or 2029 or whatever it might be. So you're pushing that projection out with additional risk, right, because of it. We don't all know what that number's gonna be. But we're more than willing to look at those kind of options and phasing and whatever might work best for the funding that's available.
I would also defer back to the city and police department on their current needs and their current buildings and what needs to be brought over. Some of these vehicle buildings, if the staff is brought over but the vehicle's not, that causes an issue for them being able to get to their vehicles. especially some of the specialty SWAT bomb crash vehicles. So we'd have to look at what does that do to operations of the department.
Well, as I'm sure you know, we have a committee that's looking at the GO bond and what we would do with all that. And so, and I guess my last question will be is, have you presented this to them, or are you going to present this to them?
We have not presented to them, but I believe they have seen portions of this from the city manager.
The committee saw the construction budget that was on the screen earlier. They saw this construction budget map that's up there on the screen right now. We did not go into the level of detail about the cost accelerators and some of the why behind some of this, but they received that other information at their last meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Anyone else, other further questions? I've got a number, so please bear with me. So earlier this year, we got some numbers that were less than the 122 million. And I don't know if this is for Mr. City Manager or for yourselves. Was municipal court, the lockers, and the detention center in those estimates this summer?
You wanna-
Again, like we mentioned earlier, we have not provided an estimate yet, so I'm not sure what those original numbers were.
Okay.
What scope they
What
included.
scope they included in that original budget.
So I was deferring, sorry, I should have been a little more descriptive. I was deferring to the slide that was in the presentation. You guys can jump back to this programming update. So in 2018, City Independence Police Department had a study done by Hafer Welker at the time. Hafer Wysocki, I guess that was at the time. As it says on here, that previously accounted for a 25-year plan, trying to be more financially resourceful. This plan anticipates a 50-year build-out. It also anticipated the needs for additional staffing. The plan that the 2018 study had only had the shell that you heard Jennifer speak to, so it was not a built-out municipal court. It was the shell facility. So that's some of the difference in the costing that you saw there.
That helps very much. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I appreciate that a lot. Please proceed.
To add in with that, so with the 2018 plan for debt servicing, I believe we were contemplating a community improvement district that was around there to help, with the debt service.
Yeah, so trying to explore knowing this was a need, and
Sure.
trying to explore all the options. What Councilmember Perkins referring to was the idea of forming a community improvement district. In order to fund the cost, even at that time, the geographic area was quite large. It started at 24 Highway and 291, traveled down 291 and encompassed that large 23rd and 291 area, made a westward turn onto 23rd Street to Lee Summit Road, picking up the
Sure.
businesses in there, and then dipped down Lee Summit Road to I-70 and Lee Summit Road to pick up Home Depot, Cracker Barrel, some of the businesses in there. That was going to be a monumental undertaking, but one which we were willing to try, but to try to get all the businesses in that territory to generate the revenue for that project. Even at that time, though, it only funded the construction of an administrative facility, which is why we were only proposing a shell cost at that time.
Sure.
Mr. City
No,
Manager,
that helps. Thanks very much.
I'm getting text that people can't hear you.
Should I repeat that, or?
Are they texting, are they hearing Jennifer and Brad, or they're hearing Jennifer and Brad, but they're not hearing City Manager?
Okay, I'll quickly repeat that just for everybody's benefit.
Is your
So-
mic hot? I don't see the green on it.
Yeah, I think we're on now.
Okay.
In 2018, we were trying to look at a plan to replace the police department. We did not go to the level of detail of what you've seen right here. We did not have the marijuana sales tax to be able to pay for this kind of detail that you see right now. So working with just a conceptual rendering from Hafer Wysocki, we were looking at a plan that would build a new administrative facility and the shell of a municipal court. Didn't go into the level of detail with this report that you've seen here, which provides a much more accurate budget. In 2018, the idea that we were pursuing to try to fund that construction was the formation of a community improvement district. And that was very large. It went from 24 and 291 to 23rd Street, west to Lee Summit Road, and down to I-70 and Lee Summit Road. Was going to be a hard task, but one that we were going to try for a variety of reasons that ultimately fell apart. But what you're seeing here for the first time is less of a speculative cost and a definitive cost of what reality would look like.
Thank you. And then then my question is, so we're going to fund it all with the GO bond. Obviously, we'll have an interest cost on that. The question is, do we have the staff on hand, Mr. City Manager, with you and your two assistants, do we have the capacity to oversee a project like this? In some situations, I see them where they hire a firm to oversee that. Is that already in this process, or where are we on that?
That's these individuals right
So
now.
you're gonna
That's us.
So you're gonna manage the entire process then.
We will be here from our
From
contract
start and
that we
finish.
saw you in April of this year to well after it's open. We'll be around making sure that it's operating properly.
And you'll do the punch list and all of that.
All
So,
of it, yep. Help move
okay.
in furniture, get
And
contractors.
all of your costs are already included in the estimates that you've given us. Is that correct? So, unless of course there's always some up cost or whatever that occur that are surprises, just like you said with regards to the drilling for the foundation. Do you have the original plans of the building, or have those been able to be found them, or
From
do you
the
know?
hospital.
They'll have the hospital, right?
We have some plans. It's a very old facility, so we don't have everything accurate, but we do have anything from the existing, the IUC portion that's still standing today. We have all of those. The original, we have some pictures of blueprints and some drawings that we'll have to dig into further. At some point, as this moves forward during design, we will probably have our contractor come in and do what's called potholing, which is more than just your geotechnical bore, which is about that big. It's a big hole. And we'll pick some strategic locations and go dig some holes in the big field that's out there so we can really identify that risk and hopefully hone in on that well before we would come to you with a final contractor price.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. And then you may have said this earlier, and I'm just asking for folks that might be watching, is the detention facility, how many people will be able to be held there? I know you've covered it before, but I've forgotten, so if you may, please.
I don't have that exact number. Do you remember, Chief? There's a lot of numbers swirling around. I want to make sure I get the right one.
Please forgive me, Chief, because I know you've said this.
Yes, so our current detention facility has 14 cells. It holds 27 individuals at the time that it was constructed, with then best practices in 1970, 72 to be exact. In new best practices, we will go from 14 cells to 19 cells and increase our capacity to 44 individuals.
So well over, and then you feel comfortable that'll be well within the range of what you need?
Yes, yeah, we, again, as Jennifer and Rad pointed out, we really tried to use a scalpel here and get as granular as we could with what we need, what we anticipate for what our capacity is, detention as well as the rest of the facility. There are no frills there.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
Just for clarification, Chief, I didn't want you to get away. These cells there are holding cells for the amount of time necessary to get people processed. They are not jail cells. People are not sentenced to these cells. Just want to be sure everybody really understands what the function of these is.
Yes, it is a detention center. It is not a county jail, as you would think of, or a prison, which is longer than a year sentence to the Department of Corrections or the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So it is none of those things. It is a temporary holding facility. We do not have nutrition services. We do not have on-site medical, pharmacy, any of those things that are required if you are going to long-term house individuals. So the point of the detention facility is to get them from in custody time or legal process to a court of competent jurisdiction or other, if someone were sentenced in municipal court for a period of 30 days, we don't house them here. They go to a contract facility, which would be a county facility that we have contracts with.
Thank you. Perfect. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chief. Any issues with regards to local traffic? Probably not, because you're not going to have that many traffic issues there. We're just double checking that off the box.
We will do a traffic study that analyzes several miles beyond the borders of just this site once we get into design, just to make sure there aren't any issues. And if there are, we would work with how we are designing our parking lot entrances and exits to direct the traffic flow to not make any issues with traffic. So at this time, no, we don't anticipate any, but we will do a full study.
And there are several new entrances as part of this site plan than
So
what
to
exists.
help alleviate that, people got a lot of ways to get out and get in. That's perfect. I didn't hear you mention anything about juveniles. How do we deal with that in this facility?
I'm going to bring Chief back up for that.
Oh, sorry,
There-
Chief.
There is accommodation for juveniles in the detention, and I'll let him get into the detail on that.
Just really wanted me to get my steps in today, Mr. Mayor. I think that was it. So my watch hasn't gone off yet. There is a juvenile separate, according to state statute, they have to be sight and sound separated from adults. And there's also the flow. I'm not going to get into specifics just for security and other operational concerns. However, there is a completely separate juvenile booking area along with a juvenile bonding area. They would be released to parents or custodians completely sight and sound separated from adults. It also provides for the officer right now, for lack of a better word, we babysit juveniles until they are processed and either taken to juvenile detention or released to their custodians. And that has to be done within the interior, which is not secure and provided for. So this actually provides a secure facility, which is best practice within current detention facilities.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Chief, you may not want to go too far. Thank you, just in case. I know this is going to be a lot more square footage, and our general fund is tight. How are we going to handle the utility cost? Have we done utility cost estimates yet to see what it would be with our current police station compared to this? Have you run any numbers on that yet?
We haven't done a comparison of the current buildings versus what this would be, but part of what we are doing, and you guys came for the design charrette, we've also had what's called an eco charrette, which is where we looked at all of the systems in the building to look at energy efficiencies, utility usage, so that we can get that best value that I mentioned earlier. So we're not picking the cheapest system that also has the highest utility cost. So we want to pick the best value for now and for the future. So we have started, the design team has started analyzing utility costs, project anticipated costs for each different type of system. At this point, since we still have a lot to design on the building, we don't have some numbers exactly on that, but I'm sure as we move forward, we can definitely get existing building costs and do some comparisons.
Okay, yeah, the sooner the better on that, because people are going to be asking that question as
Sure.
we proceed on, and
Jennifer,
do we have
can I
all of the costs
interject
covered
as
with
well?
this?
Absolutely, please do.
Just very quickly, because I know we've still got a lot of work to do to determine that, but just as a reminder to the council, we're shuttering in this plan multiple facilities and consolidating rooftops, which will conceivably have a financial benefit as well.
And the systems that you will have in this new building versus some of the older buildings will be much more efficient just by nature of the building codes that have expanded, the energy code, which is much more strict now. Just baseline, you're going to have a much more efficient building than any of the current ones you're in.
Okay, perfect. And Mr. City Manager, this one may be for you with regards to how do we engage the community? How do we explain this. I don't know if you folks handled that process, or how do we, let people know this is what's going there, this is what we have, this is the needs we have, and briefly, I don't expect you to go into tremendous detail.
I think that's a really important role that the Citizen Advisory Committee is fulfilling right now. So again, just for those that may not be familiar, each council member appointed 3 members. That makes a 21-member committee. Their plan at the moment is to finish their review on Wednesday and finalize their recommendations for November 12th. So I think the 21 individuals that have been appointed, the council did a wonderful job of identifying a representative cross-sampling of our community in many cases, and I think that will help provide some very thoughtful analysis as well.
Nope. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And then also, since there is in fact going to be a firing range, that's soundproofed.
Yes.
That way the neighborhood won't hear gunfire and all of that, but that obviously adds to the expense of the building too.
That is one of the components that is a more expensive portion of the building. If you were to look at the dollar per square foot over each building, because of the soundproofing and also the fact that the police department is firing ammunition in that building, we have to make sure it can't penetrate anything. So it is a beefy building, kind of how we mentioned about the ICC shelter, the detention areas. Those are big, concrete,
Okay.
thick buildings.
And, and you can just nod on this one, Chief, and I'll just say yes or no for the, is the evidence storage comparable, larger? It's much larger, roughly, and I'll state it out loud for folks. Do you know the comparison?
Currently about 8,000 square feet to, or I'm sorry, currently 3,000 square feet to 8,000 square feet.
Okay, so almost triple. So from 3,000 to 8,000 square feet for people that are listening and couldn't hear. So thank you very much. Excellent. Let me see if I've got any. I'm pretty close to the end here. Nope, that's all I have. And I just want to say, Chief, thank you for indulging me. Mr. City Manager, please, thank you for indulging me. And Jennifer and Brad, thank you for your presentation. And just see if any other council members have any questions before we wrap up. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay. Jennifer and Brad, thank you very much. Chief, thank you very much. Mr. City Manager, thank you very much for that. That's very helpful. So, Mr. City Manager, the next one is the Rec Center, if I'm correct.
Yes, sir. This is our final facility presentation of the night. Just want to give a little context to this as our presenter is coming forward. The city, in the context of looking at our facility needs, obviously, if the police station is going to be somewhere else and many of the functions of the current city hall are going to be relocated to the landmark building, we wanted to think about opportunities for what comes to this site, what backfills it, doing our part to be responsible civic partner and make sure we're part of the investment in the square, and also helping to create a stronger economic engine for our square and our merchants. So right now, our Sermon Center isn't just a facility that was built in 1902. It's not just a facility that was built to be a power plant and retrofitted as a community center, but it's also somewhat removed. Nolan Road runs through there, cuts that property off a little bit. So that opened up our thinking about ideas and opportunities to bring recreational facility closer to the square, one that is more functional and built for that purpose, but also one that could provide more synergy with the square as well. Part of the master development team work then was to identify Leon Younger, who's right here from Pros Consulting. He and his team, and he'll introduce all of them, but they've spent several months engaging with our community, with key stakeholders to understand many of the needs. So tonight you're going to see some of those thoughts. I do want to thank Leon. He's had about every setback you could get to get here tonight, including a plane on fire, so congratulations. That sounds fun. But Leon, if you would go ahead and just start your presentation, I think we'd all be grateful.
Okay, thanks a lot. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you kind of our end product as this book regarding the Recreation Center. So we started the Community Center feasibility study, and you all were involved, and I interviewed all of you, and so hopefully you'll see your comments and your thoughts in this facility. We also had focus group meetings and did a citizen survey as well associated with this facility. So in the past, you'd done studies like this in 2002, 2012, 2024, all indicated citizen support for a new community center. We were hired to do a feasibility study based on the master development, as Zach had said, and then initial concepts centered around sports tourism opportunities and a recplex. Based on citizen input and recognizing the selected site limitations, the focus recentered on a community center because that's what your community desired. And the proposed community center would replace the Sermon Center and Palmer Center with one combined multi-generational center. So the core spaces in the center would be in the fitness and wellness space, a sports space, aquatic space, senior space, cultural arts, as well as an indoor special event space and child watch space. This is the specific design that Jennifer and her team basically provided, and she'll walk you through that. You want to do that now? Okay.
Thank you. Jennifer Goki with PJV Architects. I just passed out hard copies because I thought it might be easier for you all to read the plans. As Lee, and we're going to share renderings after Leon's presentation as well. But Leon identified kind of the program elements, the main level. As I believe Mr. Walker described, the site is just to the east of the Truman Courthouse, about a block, actually around where we are today. So the features are you walk in at one level with the gyms, multi-purpose rooms that would serve as senior programming or other rentable space shown kind of in the peach. Classrooms that could be either fitness, arts, other type activities, cards. On the south there, on the light blue, there's plenty of space for staff, child watch. Oh, you know what, the other plans are in the book, but if you go down a level, that would be the aquatic center. Your site drops off drastically, a floor and a half. If you go up a level, that would be the fitness, cardio, walking track, an outdoor fitness area. So we'll kind of show you some more of that space after Leon's presentation. But the program was really developed based on the survey results that Leon got, and we were trying to help you create a vision. This is not a design, it's more of a concept, and to get the community excited in the hopes of it being as part of the Go Bond.
So one of the things when people look at a community center, and all of you had your thoughts about it as well, but we always look at these facilities as a health and wellness facility because first of all, they're open usually 100 to 110 hours a week, which a library is open 60. This is double that. And secondly, as we look at the health of the community and how these facilities basically can help support the needs of your residents for health and wellness. So according to the CDC here in Independence, currently your rate of 26.4% of Independence was reported as physically inactive. And this is among the highest when compared to the other benchmark communities. And we did the other benchmark communities because they have community centers, and you can kind of see where those fall out in relationship to that. And I've been doing this for a long time. These work in relationship to people using them, as well as how they basically approach health and wellness, mental as well as physical. When we started this, we wanted an outcome-based approach to how the programs and services would be results-driven. As Jennifer said, everything about this is program-driven. So what happens in the building, it's really this isn't a building you just show up and play. You can do that, but we have a lot of built-in programming to drive energy into the building as part of it. Services and programs are dependent on the ability to generate revenue to offset cost recovery. Existing services expanded through new programming and amenities We really want to focus on market-driven and trending programs that have wide age segment appeal, and that performance measures were put in place to be proactive so that at any time the city manager or the council can ask about where certain elements of the building stands. And then opportunities to create increased access to the community center for underserved populations is built in, so nobody feels like that they do not have the capabilities to afford or use the building in any capacity. When we build around the market, we really build it around, and this is through years of work, we build it around the market itself. So when we typically, most of these buildings, 80% of the usage comes within a 15-minute drive time. And so when you look at your population here, within a 5-minute drive time, there's 19,000 people, and 3.5% of the population, or 699 passes, would be sold. A 10-minute drive would be 226, and then 15-minute drive time would equate to 1,700. And these are very conservative numbers. These are not numbers that are out of range at all. So when I looked at other neighboring community centers, in Lee Summit, Blue Springs, all have different types of community centers that were built for different purposes, but this facility we're combining your centers into one. In Lee Summit, they have 3 different centers. In Blue Springs, they just opened up a new center, which was a recreation field house and aquatic facility this last summer. And then other spaces, we looked at Liberty as well, and the kind of spaces they have, and then Belton, their community center as well. And the Grandview Community Fitness Center opened in 2007, and Gladstone Community Center opened in 2013. Now, why I say this, because these are all quality of life facilities, and they're all, some of your citizens use these facilities. They go there to experience recreation or different types of sports and events that are held in those buildings. And so I share that with you just as a recognition what's going on around you. This community center, I said, is open 108 hours, 432 hours a month, and 356 days a year. And the reason why, again, because it's multi-generational. There's only 3 days that are closed. It's a combination of program-driven and membership-driven. And by program-driven, that you don't have to be a member. I can take a class and just basically use the facility. I can pay a daily rate if I want to take a daily rate. And the intent is that there'll be times where people want to just have events there, or there are different types of meetings that are in the building that nobody has to pay. It's just the intent is it's a community facility. We built all of our costs around 60% of the spaces are revenue generation. In other words, they actually create revenue. Staffing is based on lead management practices. We had a lot of discussions with Morris and his team on this, and this is where we landed. We built the pricing model based on what's going on around you, but we recognize this building probably wouldn't be built for another 3 or 4 years, so we incorporated that based on this. And then just really looked at what a monthly individual, or you could be an individual wellness pass member and have group fitness add-ons as associated. There's a non-resident rate, as well as individual rates that are yearly. So we try to demonstrate all the options that are available to citizens here in Independence. We also incorporated a scholarship fund discounted for recreational programming and community center access. We also are planning on and encourage the Park Foundation of the Future to help raise money for any assistance programs. We also updated and enhanced the scholarship and pricing policy to ensure fairness within scholarship or financial aid programs. And also we incorporated the U.S. Federal Poverty Guidelines, which is used by the Independent School District for aid to determine income-based discount rates. We also looked at dynamic pricing, which really looks at increased access. So there's prime time, non-prime time, season, off-season, and those price points can change based on what's occurring in the building. We want to recognize different prices for different times of day and increase revenue generation, more revenue than a flat rate. So this gives people lots of options. And we also want to increase customer satisfaction through a variety of pricing options so people can kind of gravitate to where they feel best suits them. These are other rates that are currently in place right now. And the communities that are involved with, they're not structured around a total cost recovery goal, which was one of the challenges that we had, was that the staff and some of you felt like the building should cover as much of its costs as possible. So when we looked at the access rates for resident daily, and the other thing about these other facilities, some of them don't have all of the amenities in one place, like what we're planning on for this facility, where the 5 core spaces are aquatics, gyms, a walking track, wellness and fitness spaces, as well as having all levels of program opportunities for seniors that are dedicated for the space. In the survey we did, people gave us what their appetite and support would be for different levels of pricing, and we incorporated that into our plan as well to make sure that we understood where those price points were. As what people's willingness to pay based on, and what's always interesting about this is when you do a survey like this, people don't have a view of what the building's going to look like. Their assumption is this what it's going to look like in their mind, but it's so different when they actually see it. And so I just share with you that the value goes up once the building's in place. And then we did some comparative recreational experiences that here in town. So we looked at what moving tickets are, and a round of golf, and a bowling party, and McDonald's. Just so these are consumptive services as well, and what people on businesses basically charge for activities that are associated with recreation or food here in town. And then we just really looked at the revenue model associated with how money would flow and work through the building. And having done this a lot, we're very confident in these numbers. And then we also included all of the unit costs and utilities. We incorporated asset management, lifecycle replacement costs at 5% of the total operating budget. So you have money every year built in to the facility to replace and update things as you need it. And then we incorporated the staffing costs associated with the facility, both full-time and part-time. And again, I go back to this is a building that's more than 100 hours, and you need full-time staff in the building, not having a building like this operated by seasonal or part-time people, okay? And then the cost, the total pro forma associated with this, you can see where that falls out, but we also incorporated your current sales tax that you have now for the Palmer Center and Sermon Center, because those facilities will be closed and incorporated into this building, so you can kind of see where the numbers fall out for this kind of operating dollars associated with this facility. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, and she'll walk you through the building.
So just, I know you're going to be hearing about, in the coming weeks, about the Independence Square Master Plan, and this really the community center plays an integral role in that. If you have heard the term live, work, play as it relates to an urban planning strategy, where an environment is created that allows a resident to do just that, live, work, play in an area, we really feel that the community center, and we're calling it a community center, not a recreation center. Although it has recreational activities, it also is very community focused. It is a gathering place for your community that they can gather around, which is how we approached the building and the layout. We visited the Sermon Center, the Palmer Center, and of course the Truman Memorial Building. We saw how the seniors use the space, how those that do use the Sermon Center, how they use that space. We're trying to create something that really people can be proud of and gather there for multiple uses, multiple times of day. I did walk you through the plan. This is the upper level with the walking track, which was scored very highly, I believe, on the survey. Cardio fitness areas, an outdoor fitness area as well. And the lower level, which is at the street level, at the street to the east, which would be the aquatics, warm water aquatics, early swim, learn to swim programs for children, warm water opportunities for seniors, et cetera, with all the appropriate support spaces, locker spaces. Just kind of wanted to walk you through. The building is situated, as I said, about a block east of Truman Courthouse. The concept was to have a lot of warm, welcoming materials in the lobby, also creating a secure checkpoint for people that going to the recreation facility, as well as kind of a free zone to the right where you could just be in the lobby without going farther into the rec. If you were renting out the meeting space, which is to the right, and you wouldn't have to go through that secure checkpoint. Oh, sorry, went really quick. This is the rentable space. It's open, 3 rooms, opens up to 1. Again, this would be used very largely for the senior programming during the day, but it's also a form of revenue for the facility at other times. The 3 court gyms, of course, pickleball is focused here, but it's also for basketball, volleyball, very flexible use. It could be used, and I'm not sure, Leanne, if you mentioned it, for tournaments of a certain age group. This is not necessarily a tourism-based facility in terms of tournament-based facility, but for the younger age, it could be used for that. Elevated walking track and cardio fitness, outdoor fitness off of that space. So this was part of our big vision, knowing Independence like we have learned about you over the last couple of years. We fronted the building, the community center, with a large green space with hopes that that could be a community park. And to the east, to the right, we're showing the potential for an amphitheater for Santa Calagan. These are all, additive elements that could be, really a lively space for community gathering out in the downtown. On the north side of the project, or of the building, I should say, is a 2-level parking deck. Parking about 200 spaces is a very economical way to do a parking deck. It's not a true garage, so we're not buying mechanical systems, but it's maximizing the footprint, and it's also providing level parking for your seniors, because this site, again, falls off drastically across its width. Again, just showing that green space as an active event space. And this is that entrance from the park space. So it's kind of a double-sided entry for either from the parking deck or from the park. And that's it. If I can answer anyone's questions, let me know about the plan.
Very good, thank you. Anyone have questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
I may have missed it, but how many full-time or even part-time associates would need to be on this facility to cover the 356 days that you mentioned it would be open?
I think we have 17. It's in here, but should have that handy. But I think it's 17 full-time.
17 full-time. Would there be any part-time?
Yes, there's part-time staff would be most of the instructors are contract or like lifeguards are part-time. So right now, on page 59 in the book, it'd be, at least mine anyway, with the positions would be a center director, the director and an assistant director are already in place with Frank and Morris, but then we would look at new positions would be recreation services, recreation supervisor over arts and culture, and over sports and wellness, and a community relations coordinator, and a building manager.
Okay. So, Mr. City Manager, how would those salaries be covered? Would you anticipate that the revenue we create from just having the community server would cover the salaries?
I would say a combination of savings from some of the monies that are going into these operations right now, new revenues generated from better programming, more attractive programming and better facilities. Those would probably be the two combinations to support additive personnel.
Okay, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
The performer does cover all those costs.
Perfect. Anyone else? Other questions? Please proceed.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So when we first started this conversation about a year or so ago, there was we were kind of moving towards of youth tourism sports, trying to bring density
Field
up
house.
here and bringing folks up here to the square that could not only partake in a new facility, but also have that potential to enjoy our square. Where did that conversation shift?
From the survey, your citizen survey?
100%.
We still have 3 courts, and it's really strong for sports tourism for 12 and under. But when you get into high school and college and adults, you can still play adult sports, but it changes, when you get it, typically a field house nowadays, if you look around Kansas City, and the major field houses usually have 6 courts at a minimum. Some of them have 10.
Is that for basketball and volleyball?
Basketball, volleyball, pickleball, wrestling. I mean, they do everything there. So gymnastics. So the intent, you still have all that capability. It's just minimized. The court sizes are all high school courts based on what we set up. And so you can actually bring those down. I mean, from a pickleball perspective, there'd be 18 pickleball courts. So that's a pretty good tournament, So I'm just saying, it's not like it's gone away. It's just that we recognize that when you've got some major field houses in the city that are really major destination facilities that are close.
Yeah.
May I jump in
Please
there?
proceed. Absolutely.
One of the things I think is important on slide 11 for those that are watching, the third bullet point says combination of program-driven and membership-based facility. That program-driven not only speaks to the classes that people would be able to sign up for as they do today, but also to the programming of youth tournaments at the appropriate level that through this feasibility study the teams identified we would be in a niche market for.
Yeah. It's just not all driven by sports. So aquatics really showed up strong on the survey, so we added aquatics into we also, with seniors, there's 3 different levels of like silver sneakers, and that's all built in. So Medicare pays for those opportunities to use the facility 3 times a week. So all those opportunities are built into in the facility.
Where's the aquatic side built in? Is it in your floor plan?
Yeah, she showed it.
Am I not catching it? Is that what that is here?
It's on the lowest level, kind of the partial plan, because the site falls off, so we're building the building into the side of the grade.
And that's not fully designed. It's really more just swim and exercise space right now. Typically a community center like this will have 4 different levels of water. So it'll have exercise, fitness water. It has play water. It has therapy water. And so we want to basically incorporate all 3 of those at a minimum. And incorporated with that, you can also, depending on having some kind of a diving well.
So what size of a pool are we looking at here?
I think it's 12,000 square feet, right?
Yeah, I think it's actually like 8,000 square feet, the footprint of the natatorium, the pool area, but I'm not sure what the square footage of the pool is, but
Sure.
there's a certain ratio percentage recommended. The program elements for the pool would be a whole nother kind of potentially community review of, what needs to be included, 3 lap lanes, whether you want slides, all of that.
but we want to make it very attractive for all age groups. You know, if you put in a therapy pool, which is usually the size of this room in here, that's warm water, and it's really great, and people love it. But then when you have fitness water, people want it cold, so you have 3 or 4 lanes for fitness water, not necessarily competitive water, because your school districts are covering that.
I understand. The problem that I'm wrestling through in my head is we're thinking about shuttering one and then building one. So now I have to wrestle with that in my mind.
I understand.
Is my real world problem here. So, not to be nitpicky, but the meeting room. So if we're combining the Truman with the Palmer Center, Sermon Center, we still have like the Truman Memorial Building in its meeting rooms. It seems like that space could be used for other programming, community theater, or extra space for.
The multipurpose rooms.
Yeah.
So we do know a little bit about your community theater programming, and it was discussed whether we should do a theater at this location as well. As part of the tourism master plan, we looked at the theater components at the Sermon Center, and that's a whole nother, all of the support bases for your theater don't fit in this building without making it much larger and much more expensive. So we kind of intentionally did not include that. There's a lot of conversation about what's going on Inglewood Arts. There's a theater group trying to get some support for a project there. Even hearing some of the feedback from the community about the theater needs, it's much more than a flat space, multi-purpose activity. It wants tiered seating, like what you have at Sermon. It wants all of the green room, all of the set storage, costume, all of that. So it's not that it couldn't be part of the community center. It just might be that your project might look a little bit different, and you might have to trade off something else if you want the budget to be the same. And I didn't mention the budget that you have in front of you was prepared by McGowan Gordon Construction. They are part of the team with Copagan Brooks and has just been assisting. So they took the plans and helped us develop the budget with escalation, et cetera, included, and soft costs.
What is that total amount?
The range, and this is including 9% escalation, which to be apples to apples to the police project, is 84 to 94 million.
What's the footprint, square footage?
109,000 square feet. And that is project cost, not construction cost. So this is such an early stage of the project. We assume about 25% of soft cost on top of construction cost. So if you were just looking at construction cost, it would be 58 to 64 million. Then there's a 10% project contingency, escalation on top of that. And yeah, does that
Go
help?
ahead. Kitchen facilities, what are we looking for kitchen facilities?
It includes actually a full-service kitchen and a catering kitchen because of the senior programming needs a separate kitchen from what you would rent out to, like for your weddings. So it actually has both.
Okay. Well, thank you for providing that for me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please proceed.
So let's start with the survey you did. I want to understand a little more about the survey, who all was surveyed, and what was the overall scope of that, so that I.
It wasn't a statistically valid survey, it was an online survey. So anybody in the community basically could provide information to us. And we took mainly the questions that we asked you and applied them to the questions for the survey.
Okay. And let's talk a little more about this tournament-based sports stuff a little bit. So we would have 3 gyms in this facility the way it's currently proposed. And, and you're saying that's not adequate for a, a high school age tournament type, but
Well, I think
below that, it could be.
if you really look, I mean, it works. I mean, it can easily work as a 3-court facility, but when you have a membership facility like this, members want to have access to. So you typically are having 2 gyms that can be tournament-based gyms, because you want to always leave at least 1 gym open for your members. Now, depending on it, you can close down 10 times a year and members aren't going to get too upset. Just like if you ran a public golf course, you can close it down on weekends, some for major tournaments. But the same thing will apply here, that you could still have them. It's just that the level and the scale. So that's what the difference is when you get into the scale of the tournament, AAU tournaments that are driven at that level. You're going to get a lot of tournaments with kids 12 and under. And parents travel, by the way, with kids 12 and under. When they get older, you don't have as much traveling as what you think you would. So the real money is spent 12 and under. So you still have that capability.
Okay, that's helpful. And I'm looking at your baseline revenues and expenditure chart, and it looks like, the bulk of what we would, between the charges that we would, or the revenue and the replacement of current expenses, there's really not too much additional funds that would have to come from the
On the
park sales
operational
tax,
side,
right?
yeah.
So
Because you already have a dedicated tax.
I'm pleased to see that. I was worried about that part of it, so. Okay, I think
I think
that's all
your
I have for
community
now.
would love it.
What's that?
I think your community would love it.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Further questions? Seeing none, I just want to say thank you very much. Anything else, Mr. City Manager, from your perspective before we wrap up on this discussion?
I just want to remind the council and everybody watching, just from a timeline standpoint, these facilities, these 3 facilities, are part of a larger conversation that are happening among those 21 committee members that are going to meet the final time on Wednesday, finalize their recommendations, and share that on the 12th. We wanted to use tonight to bring more attention and light to these facility projects, because it's been a while since we had a chance to talk to you about it. We've had some study sessions to talk about some of the other aspects of the proposed bond program, but felt like this was important. But what you're seeing here may or may not be part of the final recommendations based on what the committee's consensus comes to. So do not take any of this as it's locked in stone, set in stone, et cetera. That is part of the work that your citizen appointees are working on, and their task to deliver that information to you. So the conversation will very much intensify over the next 3 weeks, but this is the beginning of that process. So Mayor, I just appreciate the opportunity to clarify that and have nothing further this evening.
Absolutely. Anything else? Anyone else other questions before we wrap up? I believe that's all of our items for this evening. So with that, we will, excuse me. I didn't forget, I forgot the appointments recommendations. So that is my mistake. And thank you, Suzanne, for correcting me on that. So thank you.
A recommendation has been made to reappoint Tara Cruz to the Public Safety Tax Oversight Committee. A recommendation has been made to reappoint Chad Weisenhunt to the Japanese Sister City Committee. A recommendation has been made to reappoint Colin McLean to the Independence Square Advisory Board. A recommendation has been made to reappoint Maureen Kennedy to the Sustainability Commission. A recommendation has been made to reappoint Jerry Adkins to the Street Improvement Oversight Committee. A recommendation has been made to reappoint Paula Martin to the Park Commission. A recommendation has been made to reappoint Dr. Terry Morris, MD, and appoint Genesis Rivera to the Advisory Board of Health. A recommendation has been made to reappoint Ali Zaror to the Stormwater Control Oversight Committee. And a recommendation has been made to reappoint Robert Phillips to the Housing Authority. Staff requests direction to add resolutions to the next regular meeting for the reappointments of these individuals to those boards.
Any comments, concerns, or
Madam
questions,
Clerk,
please?
just a quick question. I provided a name previously for the street committee. Is that still in process, or it's John Powell? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Other comments, questions, concerns before we wrap up? Okay. Mr. City Manager, I think that takes care of it. Do you have anything else that you think of?
I can't think of anything else this evening.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you all. Everyone have a great one. Thank you.